Hello, friends. It's Nancy from Astrology and Angel Mediums today with another weekly check-in reading for the week of Sunday, November 17th through Saturday, November 23rd. So let's see what this week has in store for us and what we should be focusing on. I hope you guys enjoy these. I know a lot of these don't get like a ton of views, but I really like doing them. And I'm trying to be a little bit more consistent with what I post here and being more intentional about how I'm showing up on my different social media channels. And if, things kind of change or shift with some of the social media channels out there that are maybe not going to be, allowed any longer, like TikTok, which is one that I really enjoy and I have a lot of followers on. I wanted to kind of focus a little bit more on this, what I would consider more longer form content. All right, enough about that. Let's get into it. So we did have that Taurus full moon on Friday. And then yesterday was Hecate's feast day, I guess you could call it, for those of us that practice. All right, I think we're ready. So let's see what we need to focus on, what we need to know for this week as a collective. We have the Elder of Swords reversed, which would be the King of Swords. And what do we need to know as a collective? We have the Three of Cups. What do we need to release? The Elder of Wands. And then what do we need to contemplate? We have the Four of Cups. That's funny. Reversed. So a lot of reverse cards this week, which I think would make sense since we are kind of moving into Mercury retrograde. I don't remember if we're in the shadow. I've not been a very good astrology person because I've not been keeping up with what's been going on. All right. And we have take the lead for our moon message. And then from our elemental empath, let's see what the message is here. We have inner child as we move into Sagittarius season, which I feel like always is a good vibe, right? Okay. All right. Well, let's get into it, right? So the very first card being what we need to know. We have the King of Swords essentially reversed here. So maybe there's this sense of wanting to kind of rush forward with talking about what we believe in, what our truth is, what that means for the people that we're around. When I think of the King of Swords, I feel like it's a little bit of like this forceful, cutting, kind of cold nature that comes through. Now, I think the biggest thing with this energy is that sometimes it can kind of come off like you're being a little too direct. And so with this being more inverted or kind of internalized, maybe what we need to know is that maybe this is not a time for us to always overthink or feel like we have to share everything that we feel is the truth in our situation. I think that this is maybe saying that we should be a little bit more considerate about how we're sharing, what we're talking about, how we're communicating with others. Because again, this is a swords card. So it is very big on that communication, that mental connection, things of that, kind of like nature. So we have to be very, not to say mindful in the sense of like, oh, you shouldn't express who you are or what you have to say, but maybe being more aware of how is this going to be received. And I think that's a big thing with the sword suit is sometimes we don't really understand that what we communicate is not always going to be received in the way that we had intended. And that is just kind of how all of life is, right? Not everyone is always going to meet us where we're at. And I think with the King of Swords reversed here, especially with what we need to know, is that maybe this is not a time to be too overly direct with people about what your intentions are. And it isn't to say like this is a time for you to allow yourself to be disempowered or cut off from, what you know, what you want, and what you need. I think if anything, it's almost saying like, let's be a little bit more, again, aware, intentional, kind of hold things a little bit closer to the vest, like not really going out and shouting everything from the rooftops and letting everybody know what your next plan is or what your next thing is. That is something I've really have been trying to do the last few weeks. I've been feeling the sense of not everyone is going to witness you where you're at. And that's not always a really great feeling. And I think that's kind of the energy here, is that maybe not everyone is ready to kind of see you where you're at or meet you where you are at. And so we have this almost sense of like redirection, of reconnecting with ourselves and kind of saying, okay, what do I believe about myself? Maybe this is a time for us to kind of get down and dirty with ourselves in the sense of, who we are, what our truth is, what makes us feel empowered, what makes us feel connected, and taking a little bit of that time to kind of figure that piece out, that element, so that whenever we are moving into the next thing, we're more certain of what we're bringing and what we're doing and how that's showing up, if that makes sense. So I think that it's more of just this recognition, this realization, an understanding, so to speak, of what this will look like as we are kind of moving through this week, is more of just, okay, not every time that someone has something to say or has an opinion about you should be what you should focus on at this time. That this is more about, let's rethink, let's kind of reestablish what we know about ourselves, what we know about what we're doing, and what it is that we want. Now, it is a court card, and we do have a couple court cards here. So we may be dealing with some sort of masculine figures, and masculine in the sense of, it doesn't always have to be a man, just masculine energy that can be a little bit more forceful, a little bit more experienced in some way. And so maybe we're dealing a little bit with this kind of experienced elder energy that maybe is a little bit hard for us to deal with. Maybe we feel like it's a little restrictive. Maybe we feel like it's a little bit out of our hands as far as what we can do with this energy. Now, as far as what we need to do, no, it's what we need to know. It's what we need to do. Yeah, what we need to do is the Three of Cups. Now, this is a card that really talks about sharing the love, celebrating, coming together. This is very much a time to kind of let your love flow, basically, with the people that get you. I feel like this is very much about collaboration, community. It is an expansive card. So it's almost saying like, this is a time to kind of connect to those that really see you for who you are, those that, really celebrate you in so many different ways. And so maybe this is a time to kind of collaborate with others and to kind of share your thoughts and your feelings and your creativity. I know for me, in the space that I kind of take up, I guess, on the internet and even in my personal kind of like social medias, a lot of my friends are kind of leaning into creative ventures and wanting to kind of show up in different ways, or really focusing on that sort of energy. And I feel like that's kind of what this card is saying, is like, that's what we need to be doing, is kind of, what are we creating? How are we connecting? It's like the word that's kind of coming to me, and that really reminds me of things that I used to do way, way back in the day, was Friendsgiving. Kind of coming together and celebrating with friends. Not that it had anything to do with the actual Thanksgiving holiday, but more of just having this like opportunity to kind of share and connect before everyone gets too busy with the holiday season. It was more of just having that opportunity to kind of come together and say like, I'm so grateful for you. I, appreciate you, and just kind of like having community and connection. I think a lot of us lack that we don't really have a sense of, being able to kind of bounce into community with the people that are around us. And I know for me personally, some of the things I've experienced in the last couple of months have kept me entirely too busy or too exhausted or too energetically drained, that I haven't really been wanting to be around other people at the current moment. But now I'm starting to kind of get this inkling, this like feeling of like, oh, it'd be really nice to like, go have like breakfast, with my friends, or to set up a little brunch thing, or to have a little game night or something. So I'm starting to get this kind of feeling of like, I want to kind of be around the people that get me, the people that love me, the people that I love as well. And so I think that this week it's almost like an invitation to kind of say like, okay, we need to kind of get out there. We need to celebrate. We need to kind of commune and create together and, really allow our feelings to be what they need to be and let that be something where you're sharing so much more of that instead of feeling like you have to keep everything within yourself. So while the King of Swords is kind of saying like, hey, don't just go out there blabbing your mouth about everything. This is almost saying like, maybe it's okay to do it with people that are going to have the best of intentions for what it is that you're doing. Instead of just like, let me put this on a billboard and then wonder why things haven't really been going the way that you thought they were going to go. All right, so if we move on, if I can pick it up, nope. To what we need to release. Here we have the Elder of Wands or the King of Wands. So this is very much this, again, kind of this masculine, divine, elder, like experienced, mature energy of the wand suit. So I think that this is almost saying like, maybe what we need to release is a sense of frustration over things not moving how we thought they were going to, or a lack of momentum, or a lack of movement. It's almost saying like, let it just be something that like comes together as it needs. And it doesn't always have to be like this big, like flash in the pan of energy. And I think with this being what we need to release is maybe, again, maybe we thought things were going to look a certain way, or that we were going to get certain things done, or that we were going to have a little bit more time to kind of travel and move and shake and kind of get out into the world. And I think a lot of us have this realization towards the end of the year anyways, where we're kind of like, what did I do? And I didn't even do that. And I didn't get this done and blah, 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 blah. And so we may feel a little bit defeated with the energies, not really aligning enough for us to be able to do some of the things that we had intended. But I think with the King of Wands reverse, I think, especially with this being what we need to release, is maybe this sense of that frustration, that kind of pointing that frustration towards ourselves, not giving ourselves that grace to kind of say like, hey, some things are really outside of my control. And it's not going to help me connect any better to what drives me, what makes me feel passionate, what makes me feel on fire, if I am, constantly, berating myself or dragging myself or kind of feeling like, oh, I need to be here and I need to be there. And this is kind of funny. I'm in my 40s, right? So I've had this sense of like, I'm too old to start this, or I'm too old to do this, or, which is funny because I've never really been a person that really feels like my age, if that makes sense. But I have noticed in this last year, I've been really in this like, I'm too old for this shit. I'm too old for this, or whatever. And I don't know if this kind of energy is like similar to that, where we're kind of like blocking ourselves and we're feeling like, I'm too old to insert blank, statement about whatever. When in actuality, there really is no timeline that you have to be following in your life that states, oh, by this age you have to have this, and by this age you have to have that, and blah, 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 blah. So many of us are doing things that are so different than what most people would expect. And I think a lot of this like societal expectation of like, you should be doing this and your life should look like this, and blah, 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 blah. By the time, I get this a lot where, from some family members where they're like, by the time you're in your 40s, you should be settling down, you should have this and you should have that. And I haven't. I'm very, very much not settled. But I know myself, and I feel like that's a much more important thing to me than the financial security minded kind of things. And I'm saying this as a Taurus, okay? As a Taurus with a Taurus stellium. Yeah, it sounds wackadoodle, but I'm serious. It's one of these things where would I give up really understanding and knowing myself and accepting myself and being in a place where I am comfortable with who I am? Or would I much rather have the societal expectation of financial security and stability, but yet feel very lost in who I am? Because about 10 years ago, that's where I was. I thought, I'm doing all the things that you're supposed to do as a grown up. And yet I felt very not myself and very lost and very confused and very, um, like there was really no sense in what I was doing with my life, if that makes sense. Even though it's nice to kind of look back and say, oh, at that time I had these things that by society standards or the expectation, I really wasn't happy. And even though now I don't have a lot of the things that by society standards I should have by my big age, um, I am a lot more happy in who I am, knowing who, what I love, and then experiencing that and having that in my life feels a lot more like what really truly matters to me. And again, this is just an old lady yapping at you, but I'm just saying with the Elder of Wands, especially with this being reversed, and what we need to release is that maybe we need to kind of let go of the sense of putting so much pressure on ourselves. Because I feel like sometimes with the Kings, there is this, I don't want to say forcefulness, but rigidity would be maybe more of like the perfect word for it. Because I feel like the Kings are kind of like little emperors. So they're almost saying like, hey, love that for you, but what are you doing with this? And I think that maybe this is kind of saying like, what do you need to let go of? What do you need to kind of release about what you thought your life was going to look like, or feeling like, oh, my life doesn't really make sense to a lot of people because X, Y, and Z, or because I'm not really doing it the way that other people had intended for me to do. And at the end of the day, I mean, our lives are really ours for us to live. And I think the Elder of Wands here reversed, where it's saying this is what we got to release, is that maybe there's a lot of things within yourself that are wanting to kind of come out, whether it's creative ventures, whether it's that momentum, that movement, that like, I need to travel, I need to, be more passionate about what I'm doing. I need to be someone that's like really plugged into the things that drive me. Maybe this is kind of saying, like, when are you going to let yourself have that? When are you going to allow yourself to really step into this kind of energy more fully and let that be something that leads you from this point forward? So, as far as what we need to release, is maybe trying to kind of keep that under wraps within ourselves and kind of showing up a little bit more for ourselves in this energy. Now, finally, what we need to contemplate, we have the Four of Cups reverse. So, it's funny because we have like the two cups and then we have the two court cards. Um, I think with the Four of Cups, the misconception I feel like a lot of people look at is that they think, oh, someone's like, not really paying attention to what is being offered here instead of, really focusing on the fact that sometimes when we're in the middle of loss or we're in the middle of confusion or when we feel like something hasn't really worked out the way that we thought it was going to, we have to just kind of let ourselves feel that, because we're not going to get any clarity by saying, oh, you're just like not seeing what else is here. You're just like too stuck on, what you don't have and blah, 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 blah. And as someone that recently experienced this last week, I can tell you, like, I mean, it took me my hour of like being upset and crying and kind of like, oh, woe is me kind of vibe. And to kind of sit here and pray about it and to kind of sit here and say, like, what am I going to do? What should I do? And I think the Four of Cups reverse, it's almost saying like what we need to contemplate is that maybe there are some things in our lives that we're hanging on to that or wishes that we have for ourselves or kind of like feelings and intuitive hits that we're kind of like, I'm hanging on to this because this is what I've known or this is where I'm comfortable. And maybe there is a little bit of like the sense of, are we actually happy in our situations? Do we really see what is actually being offered here in our situation? And I think with the Four of Cups reverse here, especially in the what we need to contemplate, I think that maybe there's a lot of things that we've kind of settled for and that we're not really experiencing completely and fully because we're stuck on the four kind of energy, which is stability and structure and like the rules and regulations kind of vibe. Now, I know for a lot of us, like we've been feeling kind of like the energy has been just whack. It just hasn't really been The transits astrologically have been challenging, but it's also exactly what we may need to uncover a lot of these things. And I think with the Four of Cups, there's kind of this energy of maybe there's something here that we've been hanging on to that we know we've had to kind of like let go of, but we've been resisting because of a sense of fear. Now, I know for me, my kind of like revelation this last week was I was afraid that I would be perceived a certain way if I kind of went into doing my own thing. Just because of certain stereotypes or stigmas that are kind of associated with the things that I am also very passionate about, which is cleaning. So I decided to start my own cleaning business after being rejected from another job and feeling like an abject failure and, you know, really kind of sitting with these ugly emotions of like, you know, being rejected and not feeling good enough and feeling like I'm too old to keep trying to go into these positions because I was trying like entry level stuff where I'm like, just let me in. I can, you know, I can show you the world basically. But it, I don't know, it really essentially kind of like broke my brain where I was just kind of like, what the hell? Like, how can I make it through like 3 rounds of interviews? How can I make it through like the assessments and this and that and personality tests and blah, 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 and all these things? And then it's like, oh, sorry, we're going with a more qualified candidate. So to me, it's like, oh my gosh. And I mean, this is like third or fourth job that I've had to kind of experience that was like this. That was very challenging for me. Um, and I really struggled with that kind of idea of like getting my hopes up and then being like told no. So it's been a very interesting, to say the least, experience. Because then I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this thing. Because for the last few months, I've had this feeling of like, that's what I need to be doing. Let me just do my own thing. But I was resisting it because I was like, it's not going to be easy, right? It's just not. But I've gotten a lot of support in it already, and I'm feeling like this will be something that works well for me energetically, for me to do something that, again, as a manifesting generator, I feel like it is like I have to do things that I'm passionate about and share those very random, weird things with others. So here I am sharing with you guys. Um, And I think with the Four of Cups here, with what we need to release, is that maybe we need to kind of release a sense of I'm not allowed to be unhappy with my situation because it could be worse. I think a lot of us, you know, feel this sense of guilt or remorse, so to speak, if we were to say, oh, I don't really like this in my life, or I wish my life was this, because as we all know, there are other places in the world where things are worse. There's places here in the US where things are worse. There's maybe even situations in your own life where you know someone that is going through worse than you. And it can be hard because we feel like it's not okay for us to share and show up in our realness of like, hey, I know from the outside my life may look this way, but in actuality, I am, you know, struggling. I'm going through challenges. I'm going through, you know, loss. I'm going through something that is very hard for me to have to kind of admit, because a lot of us don't like to admit what we're doing wrong or what's going wrong in our lives. Unfortunately for me, I'm kind of a blabbermouth about where I'm fucking up in my life. So here we are. But I think with the Four of Cups reverse, especially what we need to contemplate is that maybe it isn't so much about what we would lose if we were to kind of move forward and kind of give up a sense of stability. It's maybe what we gain in that. And that's essentially kind of the whole lesson with the Four of Cups, is that it's almost saying like you're focusing too much on what you don't have, that you're missing out on what is also being presented to you here, or what is left because something else is being removed. And so I think with this week, it may be highly emotional. We may have a lot of like things coming and bubbling up to the surface that maybe we need to kind of like check back into, that maybe we need to really pay attention to. Excuse me. And I think since we're going to have, you know, Saturn also, or no, sorry, Pluto moving into Aquarius finally, I think a lot of this stuff is kind of dredging up this like restrictive kind of like, what are we doing? What has been needed to transform here? Because we're kind of getting this like sense of like, oh man, if it can't look like this, what is it going to look like moving forward? And I think a lot of us are kind of feeling the sense of, I don't want any more changes because nothing has really worked the way that I thought it was going to be working. And so it's been a little bit challenging for a lot of us to kind of deal with. So I think this week is just going to be more of taking that time out to kind of reconnect with ourselves, taking some time out to basically say, what do I really need? What does this look like moving forward? And how can I really show up in this energy for myself fully? So I hope that makes sense. Sorry for blabbing so much about my personal stuff, but I just feel like this also applied. All right, so since we had this full moon in Taurus, I wanted to pull a card from this like Moonology Messages Oracle. So this is kind of telling you to take the lead. And I think this is very good for us as we're moving into this Pluto in Aquarius transit. I think it is very much kind of saying like, hey, we're moving into Sagittarius season, we're moving into the holiday season. And so it's really kind of saying like, all right, we have to kind of move into this energy. We have to like take the lead. What is it that maybe has been illuminated for ourselves that we're ready for? Now, to me, taking the lead isn't just like showing up in a role of leadership, but maybe it can be making that choice, making that decision, maybe saying, all right, enough is enough. I'm no longer going to do life this way. I'm going to kind of change it up a little bit. I think with taking the lead, it's almost an invitation to kind of say, what is it in your life that you've been wanting to shift and change? And how can you show up in that energy? And if you haven't, why not? Let's get into it. Let's really allow ourselves, especially with these two king cards, right? We have the King of Swords and the King of Wands, kind of like internalizing some of this masculine divine energy and kind of saying like, all right, we need to kind of take the lead on what it is that kind of drives us. We need to take the lead on what our truth is and what empowers us so that we can celebrate and we can kind of move away from things that maybe didn't work out the way that we had anticipated. And then finally we have inner child, which is all about play, laughing, being silly, healing the inner child wounds. And I think with this, for Sagittarius season, and I think for the holiday season, so many of us have an opportunity to kind of like step back into our childhood selves as we're moving into like, you know, having to kind of go back and see a lot of family, because that's usually what happens at the end of the year is a lot of us go back and you see our families of origin. And so I think a lot of us have this kind of energy of like, what does that mean for me as an adult now? What does that mean for me as my own person, having to kind of step back into old memories or old roles or old expectations from people? And so I think with the inner child card, it's almost saying like, okay, it may feel challenging, it may feel uncomfortable in some ways because not all families are accepting, not all families are good, not all families are healthy. And I think with the inner child card, it's almost saying like, what can you do to kind of celebrate you and what it is that you want and what it is that you need, what it is that really feeds you. And a lot of things that I like to do during the holiday season is to kind of, you know, check in with myself to be like, maybe what's an activity that I always wanted to do that maybe I didn't get to do as a kid and kind of go experience that with my family that I've created. Other things would be maybe making time out or taking time out to kind of do certain routines and special kind of activities with my family. So like in my household, it's like we love to watch Christmas movies and my children like to have like hot cocoa and we put up the Christmas tree and then we all go shopping, you know, together to get a Christmas ornament every year. And so just little things like that where it has become something of a tradition for us. And that feels very healing for me because growing up, I didn't get to do those sort of things. You know, being able to kind of share stories and kind of hang out together and cooking and this and that or whatever, you know, things of that nature. Or maybe like, you know, we'll talk about Yule or whatever. Like, I like to kind of explore all of the different holidays and kind of educate myself on them, because again, I think it's something that is very beautiful, that so many things are celebrated during the next like 6 weeks, right? So many things are, going to be happening, and so many of us are busy and going and this and that and the other. And I think with the inner child card, it's kind of that celebration of like, how can you celebrate what really speaks to you and what makes you feel comfortable and what makes you feel more centered and grounded in your experiences. So while it may feel a little bit like weird at first while you're starting to do this, if this is not something that you do, because I know for a lot of people, they talk about they're doing inner child work or whatever, but it's more of like the journaling, things of that nature, versus like actively doing, because I may feel like it's a little silly. Again, it's that whole like, I'm too old to be doing this, but just have fun. I think joy is something that is like transcends age, right? And I think just having joy is something that can be beautiful, and that maybe you need a little bit more of this week. So I hope that that made sense. Let me know what you guys think of these. I hope you guys are enjoying these. I really do like this kind of little format. I know most people prefer like a pick a pile. I hope to have time this week to try to record one. I know it's been a long time since I've done one, but it ends up being like a 2-hour recording because I just yap, and I just appreciate you guys watching these. As always, I hope you're enjoying the other videos that I've been sharing. If you have suggestions or questions or anything like that, let me know. I really hope you guys have a fantastic week. Please take care, stay safe, and as always, make good choices. Bye.